My wife demanded a divorce and said it was because of that girl. But that girl was our daughter. When she said it, I thought I misheard. I blinked, stared at her across the dinner table, and asked her to repeat it. "You heard me," she said, her voice calm but icy. "You care more about Emma than you ever did about me." Emma, our 17-year-old daughter. The girl I raised, loved, protected through every scraped knee, every exam, every midnight breakdown. The same girl who once held my hand at her elementary school play and whispered, "I remembered all my lines, Dad, because you helped me." And now my wife, her mother, was saying this, not out of rage, not in the middle of an argument, but quietly, over a plate of salmon and asparagus, like she was reading the weather. "You're exaggerating," I told her. "She's our daughter. Of course I care about her." She shook her head slowly. "No, Jack. You obsess over her. You treat her like your little queen, your emotional partner. You share more with her than you ever did with me." I wanted to argue, but the words got caught in my throat, because part of me knew where this came from. We hadn't been close in a long time, not since Emma was 12. That was the year things started shifting between us. My wife began pulling away. Less affection, less talking, more hours spent in the study or at her sister's place, claiming she needed space. So I poured more into Emma, because I didn't want her to feel the cold I was starting to feel. I stepped up for her. School drop-offs, late-night talks, helping her through anxiety and self-doubt. She leaned on me, and I leaned right back. Maybe too much. That night, after our dinner-turned explosion, I slept in the guest room. Not because she told me to, but because I couldn't stand the silence between us in that bed. I kept replaying her words. That girl, like Emma, was a threat. Like she wasn't her child, too. The next morning, my wife packed a suitcase. Said she was going to stay with her sister for a while. To think, she said. To breathe. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Emma came home from school an hour later. Saw the suitcase gone. Saw the tight look on my face. "Is she gone?" she asked. Quietly. I nodded. She didn't cry. She just walked to me, rested her head on my shoulder, and said, "I knew she hated me." I pulled her close. "She doesn't hate you. She's just confused." But in my heart, I wasn't sure. And that terrified me. Over the next week, I cooked. I cleaned. I did what I always did. Kept the house running, kept the peace. Emma and I talked more than usual. She asked if we were getting divorced. I said I didn't know. Then, on a Sunday afternoon, I got a call. From my wife. "I want to talk," she said. Face to face. She came over that evening. Emma stayed in her room. We sat in the living room. She looked thinner, tired, but still sharp. "I think we need to separate," she said. Formally. "Because of Emma?" She hesitated, then nodded. "You really believe I've replaced you with our daughter?" "I believe," she said slowly, "that you've stopped seeing me. That somewhere along the way, you put all your emotional energy into her and left me empty." There was pain in her voice. Real pain, but also something colder. Like resentment aged into poison. "So you're punishing her." I'm freeing myself. I sat there, stunned. The woman I built a life with was walking away. Not because I cheated. Not because I lied. But because I loved our daughter too well. And I realized something that made my stomach twist. This wasn't about Emma. It was about her. Her ego. Her need to be the center of every room. The unspoken competition she started the day Emma began growing into her own voice, her own strength. And now, she was losing. So she quit. She stood up, smoothed her blouse, said she'd send the papers soon. And just like that, she was gone again. Emma came out a few minutes later. Eyes red. She said it was because of me, didn't she? I opened my mouth. But I couldn't lie. I nodded. She broke. And I just held her, wondering what kind of mother sees love as a threat. The next few days were like walking through fog. Emma barely spoke. I tried to keep things light around her, pretending normalcy, but we both knew that part of our lives had ruptured. Breakfasts were quiet. Dinner was quick. And every time the doorbell rang, I could see a flicker of hope in her eyes that it might be her mom. It never was. On Wednesday, I got a call from a mutual friend. Someone who didn't know much, but had heard enough to be dangerous. "I ran into her at the grocery store," he said. "She said you were emotionally inappropriate with Emma, that she felt uncomfortable." I froze. "What do you mean, inappropriate?" He hesitated. "She didn't say anything concrete, just that you had this obsession with your daughter, that it felt wrong." That word hit me like a punch. Obsession. I couldn't breathe for a second. I hung up without saying much. My hands trembled as I poured myself a glass of water. Emma walked in right then, took one look at me, and said, "What happened?" I smiled too fast. "Nothing. Just work." But I couldn't hide the panic. Because now I knew what my wife was doing. She wasn't just leaving. She was rewriting the story. She was planting seeds. That night, I pulled out an old photo album. Not the digital kind. The thick, leather-bound one with plastic sleeves and scribbled dates. Emma as a toddler, giggling in a pumpkin costume. Her first day of kindergarten. Her broken arm from falling off the monkey bars. Me beside her with a cast of my own because she wanted us to match. I stared at those pictures and asked myself the unthinkable. Had I done something wrong? I had always been present. Too present, maybe. I showed up when her mom disappeared emotionally. I listened when no one else did. But had I blurred a line? No. No. I had been a father. A real one. Not perfect, but protective, empathetic, loving. And yes, probably guilty of putting Emma above my marriage. But never in a way that crossed into darkness. Still, I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I got an email. From my wife. Subject line, "For your review." Attached was a draft divorce agreement. Clinical. Cold. Asset division. Custody options. A small note at the bottom. Recommending supervised visitations until family therapist evaluates the emotional dynamics. I laughed. Out loud. A bitter, hollow sound. She wanted to paint me as a threat. To Emma. Emma walked into the room just as I closed the email. "Was that her?" she asked. "Yeah." She sat beside me. "She texted me yesterday." My heart jumped. "What did she say?" Emma hesitated, then pulled out her phone and handed it to me. One message. Short. Clean. Surgical. "You need distance from your father. He's not who you think he is." I stared at the screen, and something inside me cracked. "She thinks she can scare you away from me," I whispered. Emma didn't say anything. "Do you believe her?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, but I think she's trying to. I think she's trying to make this about anything but herself." And for the first time, I saw Emma not as a child, but as someone standing beside me, reading the same map of betrayal. "She's not coming back, is she?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not as the person we knew." We sat in silence. Father and daughter. Not broken, but bruised in places we hadn't yet learned to name. Outside, rain tapped on the windows. Inside, the past started rewriting itself in real time. A week after that email, I got served. It was a Tuesday morning. I was drinking coffee in the kitchen, trying to force down toast, when the doorbell rang. A man in a windbreaker, clipboard in hand, handed me an envelope and mumbled something legal-sounding before vanishing down the steps. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there, holding it like it might explode. It did in its own way. The documents were official. Divorce proceedings. And not just that. My wife had filed for an emergency injunction, claiming emotional enmeshment, suggesting that my relationship with Emma was psychologically harmful. She used that word again, obsession, and now it was in legal ink. I called my lawyer. He read it, sighed heavily, and said, "We'll fight it. But prepare yourself. It's going to get ugly." Ugly. That night, I didn't tell Emma. I couldn't. I watched her doing homework at the kitchen table, brows furrowed, headphones in. She looked peaceful. I didn't want to break that. Not yet. But it didn't last. 2 days later, I came home to find her crying in the hallway. Papers scattered across the floor. She emailed me. Emma said, "All these files. Letters. Notes. Screenshots of texts we've sent each other. She said I need to wake up. That you're manipulating me." She was shaking. Not just from anger. From doubt. "Emma," I said, kneeling beside her. "You know who I am." She looked at me, eyes rimmed red. "I know. But she makes it sound so calculated. Like I'm some pawn in your life. Like every hug, every ride to school, every time you showed up, was just about control." I felt like someone had taken a crowbar to my chest. "You think I used you?" She didn't answer, and that silence crushed me. We sat there for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know what to believe anymore." And just like that, I felt the first crack in the bond I'd fought so hard to preserve. The next day, I asked my lawyer to set up a family therapist. Not court-appointed. Someone neutral. Someone kind. Someone who might help us hold on to each other. He scheduled the session for the following week. Said it would be confidential. Just the three of us. Emma was hesitant, but she agreed. I think she needed it too. When we arrived, the therapist, Dr. Levin, was soft-spoken, probably in her 60s, with sharp eyes and the kind of voice that made you feel seen and skinned all at once. "We're not here to assign blame," she said. "We're here to listen, to understand." Emma spoke first. Tentative. Scared. "I feel torn. Like I'm in the middle of a war I didn't start." I stayed quiet. Dr. Levin asked me to describe my relationship with Emma in 3 words. Protective. Loyal. Constant. Then she asked Emma the same. She hesitated. Then said, safe. Heavy. Complicated. That word, heavy, stuck with me. Dr. Levin nodded, scribbled something. Children can become emotional anchors for parents when marriages fray. It's not always abuse, but it can blur roles. Sometimes love gets tangled with responsibility, and sometimes that can feel like pressure. Emma looked at me. "Sometimes I feel like I have to keep you okay." That hit me harder than anything else. Because it was true. I had leaned on her. Too much. Made her my confidant. My shelter. Not just my daughter, but my compass. And maybe that wasn't fair. Dr. Levin asked me what I wanted moving forward. To protect her, I said. But not at the cost of her peace. Emma wiped her eyes. "I don't want to lose you, but I need space to figure out who I am, without carrying your pain." That night, I lay awake for hours. The truth burned hot in my throat. Maybe my wife wasn't entirely wrong. Not about me being dangerous, but about me being lost. So lost in holding on, I never asked what Emma needed to let go. The next session was scheduled a week later, but something shifted in the days between. Emma barely spoke to me. She was polite, kind, even, but distant in a way that made my bones ache. I'd walk into the room, and she'd close her laptop a little faster. I'd ask how school was and get a flat, "Fine." At dinner, she sat with headphones on, eyes low. It wasn't defiance. It was grief, and I knew exactly where it was coming from. Because when someone you trust plants a seed of doubt in your mind, and that someone is your mother, it takes root in the cracks you didn't know you had. That's what was happening to Emma. Not because she believed her mother entirely, but because part of her wanted to, needed to. She needed to believe that maybe the fracture in our family wasn't her fault. That maybe if she pulled away from me, things would balance out again. And the worst part? I understood. The night before our second session, she told me she wanted to stay at her mom's for the weekend. Said her mother had called, apologized, said she wanted to talk. I felt my stomach drop. "It's okay," Emma said, quickly, like she was managing my reaction. "It's just a couple of nights. I think I need to see things from both sides." I nodded, swallowing hard. "You don't have to explain. I get it." She stood by the door, backpack slung over one shoulder, and looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen in days. "Dad, don't make this harder than it is." I wanted to say 1,000 things. That I missed her already. That I didn't trust her mother. That she didn't know what she was walking into. But instead, I just said, "Text me when you get there." And she did. The house felt different without her. Not empty, just suspended. Like every room was waiting for her to walk back in and fill the space again. That night, I sat in the living room and stared at a blank TV screen for an hour. Then I opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was going to write, but my fingers started moving anyway. I wrote to Emma. A letter. Not to convince her. Not to defend myself. Just to tell the truth. About how scared I was. About how I didn't have all the answers. About how I may have leaned too hard on her. Not because she owed me anything, but because she was the only person in my life who ever made me feel steady. I told her that wasn't fair, and that I was sorry. I didn't send it. Just saved it. For later. For whenever. 2 days passed. No messages from her, besides the one confirming she'd arrived. I told myself not to panic. Told myself space was good. Necessary. Then Sunday night, my phone buzzed. It was her. "Can you pick me up?" I didn't ask questions. I just said yes. When she climbed into the car, she looked different. Worn out. Pale. Her eyes were swollen. "What happened?" I asked gently. She shook her head. It was fine. Until it wasn't. I waited. She said things I didn't expect. Made it sound like I was brainwashed. Like I was too dumb to see what you were doing. She stared out the window. And then she said if I didn't agree to testify in court, to say I felt unsafe, she might lose everything. My jaw clenched. Emma looked at me. "She asked me to lie, Dad." I pulled over. Put the car in park. "I didn't know what to say," she whispered. I just sat there. And she started crying. Said I was choosing you over her. I reached out, touched her shoulder. You're not responsible for her feelings, Emma. She nodded, biting her lip. I know. I just didn't think she'd go that far. We sat in silence. Can I stay home tonight? She asked finally. I nodded. You never stopped. And in that quiet car, under a street lamp on the edge of town, I realized something that made my throat close. We weren't just fighting for custody. We were fighting for the truth of who we were allowed to be to each other. Without shame, without fear, without someone else twisting love into something dark. And I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Monday morning, the subpoena arrived. It was addressed to Emma. I opened the front door expecting a package, maybe some insurance mail. Instead, a courier in a navy vest handed me a large envelope with her name printed in bold. I didn't even have to open it. The logo from her mother's attorney was in the corner. She was forcing her to testify. Emma was in the kitchen, pouring cereal. When I placed the envelope on the table, she didn't look surprised. She just stared at it, then whispered, "She really did it." I nodded. "I'll call the lawyer. We can fight this." Emma pushed her cereal away. "No, I want to go." I stared at her. "Why?" "Because if I don't face her now, she'll never stop. She'll keep pushing, keep twisting, keep making me the villain in her story if I don't say it out loud. To her face. To everyone." I felt my gut clench. "Emma, you shouldn't have to go through this." She looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw someone older than 17. Someone who'd been forced to grow up fast. Someone who was tired of being pulled apart. "I already am," she said. The hearing was scheduled for Friday. That whole week was a blur of lawyer calls, school drop-offs, quiet dinners, and the constant dull throb of anticipation. Emma was calm, or at least, she pretended to be. But I caught her staring into space a few times, her fingers tapping the side of her leg like she was trying to keep a rhythm that didn't exist. Thursday night, she knocked on my door. "Can we go over what I might say?" We sat on the floor with a legal pad between us. I didn't coach her, didn't suggest lines. I just listened. "She's going to say you manipulated me," Emma said. "She's going to call you unstable, that you leaned on me too much emotionally." I took a breath. "Is any of that true to you?" Emma looked down. "Some of it," she admitted. "You did lean on me. You did make me feel like I had to hold you together sometimes. But you never made me feel unsafe. Not once." She met my eyes. "You were never the problem. You were just the one left standing when she walked away." And I felt something warm and sharp slice through me. A kind of grief tangled with relief. Because honesty hurts. But it also frees you. Friday morning, the courtroom smelled like stale coffee and anxiety. Emma sat beside me in a navy sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back tight, no makeup. Her mother arrived 10 minutes late. Expensive coat, confident stride. She didn't look at us. Not once. When they called Emma to the stand, I wanted to run. To stop it. To protect her. But I didn't. I let her walk forward. She was sworn in. Sat upright. And then came the questions. First from her mother's lawyer. Slanted. Surgical. Full of half-truths and insinuations. "Did your father ever cry in front of you?" "Yes." "Did he ever speak negatively about your mother to you?" "Sometimes." "Did you feel emotionally responsible for his well-being?" Emma paused. "Sometimes." The lawyer smiled like he'd just sunk the ship. Then our lawyer stood. "Emma, do you believe your father ever intentionally harmed you?" "No." "Do you feel emotionally safe with him?" "Yes." "Why do you think your mother is making these claims?" Emma took a deep breath. "Because she's angry. Because she lost control. Because she can't accept that sometimes love doesn't center around her." The room went still. Even her mother flinched. "Do you want to live with your father?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he sees me, not just as his daughter, but as a person. And because he never asked me to choose." She did. Her voice cracked on that last line. And just like that, I saw the scales tilt. Later, outside the courthouse, Emma collapsed into my arms. Not crying, just exhausted. "You were brave," I whispered. "Braver than I've ever been." And I meant it. She had told the truth. Now we just had to live with it. We didn't hear anything for 3 weeks. The judge said she needed time. Said there were complex dynamics that deserved careful consideration. Legal talk for this family is broken in ways paperwork can't fix. During those 3 weeks, Emma didn't talk about the hearing. Not once. We went back to school drop-offs, grocery runs, and late-night TV, pretending things were normal. But it was never normal again. Not after watching her testify. Not after seeing her mother walk out of that courtroom without saying a word, her heels clicking like gunshots across the tile floor. One night, Emma came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes. She leaned against the counter and said, "Did you ever think she might win?" I didn't lie. Yes. Would you have let me go if she had? That one caught me. I turned off the faucet, dried my hands slowly, looked her in the eyes. If the court had ruled that way, I wouldn't have had a choice. But I would have fought every day after. Not to pull you back, but to prove they were wrong. She nodded. That's what I figured. We sat in the quiet for a long time. Then came the letter. An official envelope. No ceremony. Just a single-page ruling with 3 bullet points. Full custody granted to father. No restrictions on visitation, pending therapist approval. Claims of emotional harm deemed unsubstantiated and influenced by ongoing personal conflict. Emma read it twice, then folded it up and placed it in a drawer. You want to celebrate? I asked. She shook her head. It doesn't feel like a win. And she was right. Because even though the court had seen through the lies, it didn't change the damage already done. It didn't take back the months of manipulation, the questions she had to ask herself, the doubt that still flickered in the quiet moments. That weekend, her mom sent her a voice message. I only know because Emma asked if she could play it on speaker. It started quiet, hesitant. Emma, I don't know what to say. I thought I was doing what was best. I thought you were being pulled away from me. I never wanted it to get this far. Then her voice cracked. But I also don't know how to forgive you. Emma froze. I'm your daughter, she whispered to the phone. You're supposed to protect me, not guilt me. But the message kept going. You embarrassed me in court. You made me look crazy. I hope someday you realize what you did. That was the end. No apology. No accountability. Just a fresh layer of shame wrapped in a wounded tone. Emma deleted it. Then she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. She loved me when I was small and quiet. She doesn't know how to love me now that I have a voice. And I realized this wasn't just a story about custody. It was about ownership. Emma had never belonged to her. Or to me. She belonged to herself. All we could do now was protect that. Nurture it. Even if it meant standing in the aftermath of someone else's storm. Spring came late that year. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was everything else. But nothing bloomed the way it was supposed to. Trees stayed bare longer. The air held its chill. Even the sky seemed tired. Emma stopped mentioning her mom entirely. At first, I thought she was avoiding the pain. But one night, over pizza boxes and an old movie, she said it flat out. I don't think she ever comes back from this. Not really. I asked what she meant. She lost control. And when people like her lose control, they either get honest or they disappear. She picked disappearing. And she had. No more messages. No surprise visits. Just silence. Like she'd evaporated. But silence isn't the same as peace. Emma had started therapy. Same woman from before. Dr. Levin. They met twice a week. Sometimes Emma would come home quiet, thoughtful. Other times she'd be irritable, closed off. But always, she showed up. She was doing the work. Me? I was still figuring it out. I cooked more. Slept less. Started jogging again. Though most days it felt like I was just trying to outrun the guilt. Not because of what I'd done, but because of what I hadn't seen. One night, I walked past her room. The door was cracked. She was on a Zoom call with her therapist, and I heard her say, I don't want to be my dad's reason for waking up in the morning. I want him to have his own life. I stepped away, didn't eavesdrop further, but those words rang in my head all night. She wasn't wrong. I had built too much of my identity around being there for her, protecting her, holding the pieces. But she didn't want to be held anymore. She wanted to fly. So I started letting go. Small things. Letting her drive herself more. Giving her space in the kitchen without hovering. Letting her choose dinner without turning it into a father-daughter ritual. At first, she noticed. You okay? She asked one night after I didn't jump up to fix the leaky faucet. Just giving you room, I said. She smiled. Thank you. And it wasn't a goodbye. It was a trust fall. Weeks passed. The air warmed. Trees finally blossomed. One afternoon, I came home to find Emma sitting on the back porch, a journal in her lap. You know, she said, not looking up, I think I'm going to apply out of state. It caught me. Hard. Out of state. Yeah. Far. Like really far. I sat down across from her. You sure? No. But I think I need it. I need to know who I am when I'm not being pulled apart. When I'm not someone's shield or project. I nodded. Slowly. Carefully. You won't lose me. I said. Even if you go. I know, she said. Then looked me dead in the eyes. But you can't follow me either. Not in the way you have. It hurt, but it was true. And in that moment, I realized the most loving thing I could do was to stop holding on like the world would end if she let go. Because it wouldn't. She was her own person. She always had been. And maybe now, finally, she believed it too. Emma left in August. We packed up her car in the driveway. 2 suitcases, a box of books, her guitar, and the old Polaroid she loved since she was 10. The morning air was thick with heat, but neither of us complained. We worked in silence. Not cold, just focused. Like if we thought too hard, we'd both fall apart. I kept looking for some last thing to fix. Adjust a bungee cord. Check the tire pressure. Offer her snacks for the road. But I knew what I was really doing, delaying. She turned to me, finally, sunglasses perched on her head, and said, "You okay?" I nodded. "Are you?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I think so. I'm nervous, but it's the good kind." And I felt something shift in my chest. A mix of pride and ache so strong I had to look away. "You call when you get there," I said. "Of course." She stepped in and hugged me, tighter than I expected. "You were the anchor, Dad," she whispered. "But I need to be my own boat now." I laughed through the sting in my eyes. "Just don't forget the harbor." She pulled back, nodded, then climbed into the car. Engine roared to life. I stood there and watched as she pulled away. Didn't wave, didn't chase, just watched. Later, I found the letter, folded neatly, taped to the fridge. My name on the front in her handwriting. "Dad, you always told me to tell the truth, even when it's hard. So here it is. I love you, deeply, but I need space not because of you, but because I need to learn who I am without you catching me every time. You were never too much. You were just all I had when everything else fell apart. And that saved me. But now, I have to see who I am when I'm not surviving. Don't stop living for you. Love, Emma." I sat with that letter all night. Didn't drink. Didn't cry. Just sat there, breathing. It's strange. You spend your whole life trying to protect someone, only to realize the greatest protection you can offer is letting them go. 2 weeks later, I started volunteering at a community center. Nothing big, just helping kids with homework, fixing things, listening. One of the boys, maybe 12, asked me, "Do you have any kids?" I smiled. "One. She's off learning how to be amazing." And he nodded like that made perfect sense. It does now. This isn't a story about divorce, or custody, or courtroom wins. It's a story about love. The kind that doesn't grab, doesn't cling. The kind that says, "I'm here. I believe in you. And you don't owe me your life to prove you love me back." I don't know who Emma will become, but I know this. She's free. And I'm finally learning how to be, too. The first real call came on a Thursday evening, 2 months after she left. I was cleaning out the garage, the last frontier of forgotten boxes and unfinished projects, when the phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. "Hey," I answered, trying to sound casual, like I hadn't been hoping for this. "Hey," she said. Her voice was softer than usual. "Tired. Do you have a minute?" I dropped the wrench. "Always." She talked about her classes. A roommate who leaves dishes in the sink. A professor who reminds her of her mom. Too charming, too cold. Then there was silence. Not awkward, just full. "It's hard here," she said finally. "Not bad. Just hard." "That makes sense," I said. "I don't have to be anyone's anchor. But sometimes, I miss having someone who knew what I needed before I did." I didn't rush to fill the silence. "You're allowed to miss it," I said. "Doesn't mean you were wrong to leave." She sniffled. "You always do that. Say the exact thing I don't know I need to hear." And I smiled, because that was still ours. We talked for an hour. Nothing profound. Just 2 people stretching a thread across state lines. Then before hanging up, she said, "Hey, Dad. Yeah, I think I figured it out. The thing I was trying to say in that letter. Okay. It wasn't just that I needed to grow. I needed to know you would, too. That you wouldn't just freeze in time waiting for me." And I almost dropped the phone again. Because she was right. That was the trap. The lie I almost believed. That being a good father meant being stationary. Stable. Predictable. But Emma didn't need a statue. She needed a person. Someone becoming. And maybe that's the legacy we don't talk about enough. Not what we give our kids, but what we model. Not just love, but change. Resilience. The permission to rebuild. She hung up, and I stood there for a long time. Garage half done, floor covered in dust and light. I didn't feel sad. I felt something else. Lighter. Like grief had shifted into something quieter. That night, I took out a notebook I hadn't touched in years. Started writing again. Not about her. Not about the past. Just stories. Ones that weren't soaked in pain. Just people. Messy, flawed, trying. Like me. I don't know where this story ends. But I know I'm not waiting anymore. I'm walking. And somewhere out there, so is she. And that's enough. Fall arrived with quiet mornings and long shadows. The house stayed clean now. No forgotten coffee cups. No trail of Emma's textbooks from room to room. Just stillness. But not the lonely kind. The kind that lets you hear yourself think again. I started journaling every morning. Nothing profound. Just thoughts. Fragments. Sometimes a memory. Sometimes a question I didn't need an answer to. One entry, I wrote. When your purpose changes, who are you in the silence? I didn't know, but I was getting closer. Emma called once a week now. No script. Sometimes she just wanted to vent about dorm life. Other times we didn't talk at all. Just stayed on the line while we did other things. It was its own kind of presence. She told me she joined a writing club, that she read something out loud for the first time. I didn't ask to hear it. I just told her I was proud. That seemed to matter more. One Sunday, I got a letter. Real paper. Her handwriting. Dad, I saw this quote in one of my classes. A daughter learns how to love by watching her father. And it hit me. That maybe you never got the love you deserved. But you gave it anyway. Not perfectly. Not easily. But completely. I think that kind of love leaves echoes. In how I hold people. In how I walk through the world. I just wanted you to know that. I carry it. Still. Love. Emma. I read it twice. Then framed it. Not because I needed proof. But because some things deserve walls, not drawers. Later that evening, I sat on the porch with a blanket and a mug of tea. The wind picked up. Leaves scattered across the yard like tiny fires. I thought about all the versions of me that existed in the last year. The father. The fighter. The man unraveling. The man rebuilding. I wasn't any one of them now. I was all of them. And that's the quiet truth no one tells you. Sometimes survival isn't dramatic. It's gentle. It's small. It's making tea and not crying. It's reading a letter without needing to fix anything. It's letting love become memory without turning it into weight. Emma would visit for the holidays. We didn't make big plans. Just food. Old movies. Some walks around the lake. And maybe that's the real miracle. Not that we survived the fire, but that we made a home in what came after.